over the years, we've always talked about, I guess the best way to say it is the business of university photo and video. And always one of the things that comes up is how are you funded? How do you manage a variety of topics? So in preparing for this symposium, we thought this might be something good to talk about. So we have chosen 3 people who are managing departments at different universities and colleges. And when they introduce themselves, I think it'll become apparent why we chose them. Some people you know, and I'm sure one person you really don't know. So I think we'll start with you, Claire, for an introduction.
All right, good morning, it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Clare Briner. I am the Chief Marketing and Communications Officer at Moraine Valley Community College, and I have the distinct pleasure of working with Glenn Carpenter on a daily basis. I oversee a team of about 20 professionals doing all things marketing and communications for our institution. Those people include my visual media team, a staff of 3 doing photo and video, and they report directly to me.
Perfect.
I'm Andy Tucker. I'm the Assistant Director for Photography at the University of Georgia in our Marketing and Communications Department as well. We have a staff of 4, including myself. I do still shoot, but also help manage our team, lead our team, and I became a supervisor like a month before COVID hit, so it got really interesting, like trying to do that from home. But it's been great to be back together, and I have a great staff, and they are all professionals. So.
I'm Roger Hart, the Director of Michigan Photography and Michigan Media at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. I supervise a staff of 8 on the photo side and 8 on the video side. And I've been there, I just got my 10-year President's Award last month, so. Thank you very much. They said it wouldn't last, so, but here I am. So I look forward to this discussion.
Excellent. All right. So I'll keep trying to remember to come back to the mic. So one thing that we always talk about is the difference in how we are funded. And it'll become apparent why these folks are here, because it's always cost recovery versus fully funded. So just for show of hands, and then maybe discuss some of the pros and cons about each of those. So who are the fully funded people on the stage? And Roger is the cost recovery. Okay, so in any order, doesn't matter. Maybe just talk about advantages and benefits, things that you might need to change of those systems.
Well, I'll start. I think, I don't know, how many out here are cost recovery? Okay, so it's a less percentage than what I thought. But we are charged back on both the photo and video side, and as a matter of fact, our entire marketing department is cost recovery. So besides the photo and video, we also have an agency group called Michigan Creative, which is a much larger operation, and they're also all cost recovery. The advantages I see to it is that we can make some decisions a little bit quicker as far as staffing and also capital purchases and things like that, because you can make a business case. And in the talk we had yesterday, people asked me questions about how would you raise, add more staff and things like that, and it's data, and we can point to the number of assignments we had, the amount of revenue we bring in, the cost per job that it takes, and then whatever profit margin we have. And profit is not a word you really use too much around the university, but we have to be within plus or minus 7% of what our expenses are, and that was, it's usually relatively easy to do. It wasn't during COVID. Obviously, the video side stayed pretty strong, but the photo side was practically non-existent for those first few months. But so that's the advantage. The disadvantage is that Michigan is a large university that has large departments that generate a lot of revenue, and they have a lot of money, and they can afford our services. And then there are smaller departments that don't have a lot of money, and they get neglected because they can't afford our services. And we're charged with documenting what's going on within the university, and I say, well, we document who can pay for it. not really what's all there. That was one of the things I noticed when I first got to the job, and so ever since that time I've been asking for funds so that we can share images and we can share video with groups, and we've been successful the last couple of years. From the provost granted us quite a bit of money to provide stock photos and B-roll video that we can just put out there and let anybody use, because the provost was noticing that there was a lot of bad images being used by different departments, and she wondered why that was. And so we had a long discussion, and that was why. And she said, well, how can we change that? And I said, well, give me $170,000 and we can change it. And she said, is that all? And I went, ah. There was my chance and I blew it. Yeah. So, but the other thing that helped us a little bit is that we just went to a campus-wide dam system this year. That will change our revenue outlook a lot, because we no longer have to pay for our servers, software, and the maintenance on all of that, that was at least 10% of our overall operating budget annually. So, anyway, that was the advantages and some of our disadvantages.
Being fully funded is a lot less paperwork, which I appreciate, not having to be bogged down with that component of the job. But we are a centralized department too, so we are catering to the entire campus, obviously much smaller scale than what's happening at either of these institutions. But it allows us to cover what we know is important to the institution, not just what's asked of us or paid for, right? That's not to say we don't have requests from individuals who think their event is the best thing since sliced bread and want us there for the full 4-hour, event when we need 4 minutes to get, the image we need, right? So we have a lot more interpersonal sort of negotiating to do with our colleagues on our campus to make sure the work that we're doing actually brings value to the institution and to the client themselves. Sometimes, of course, they just don't know what makes a good image or a good video, and we have a lot of consulting to do in that process.
Yeah, we used to be external affairs, and under that umbrella, we were more in a more public affairs kind of reactive model. We were kind of a hybrid. Our salaries and stuff were on state dollars, but our conference and gear and all that stuff was on our revenue budget. So we ended up taking assignments to help offset those costs and to have the ability to purchase things and to send people places and to cover different things. When we transitioned to a marketing communications several years ago, and our whole division, the whole university went through an entire rebrand, it changed that marketing proactive approach, which was fantastic, because it allowed us, we didn't have to go chase all the grip and grin stuff to get new cameras. We have a budget for that every year. Now we get to focus on the things that matter to the institution, whether it's stuff that we think is important to document or just going out and making good pictures that go into our archive and then the campus can pull from for free. So when we were charged back, we would charge them for the time, charge them for, we'd build contact sheets in Photoshop, I'm like, oh my God. But, and they would get those, and then they would order high res and get those back. And it was a lot of paperwork. There was a lot of bill them, get it back, invoicing, and man, it is so nice being a supervisor and not have to worry about that. I never had to deal with that. My predecessor did, and that took up a lot of his time. So it allows us to think about, okay, what are we missing? What kind of pictures do we need to make? And it allows our team to be much more creative than just chasing some of the stuff that we had to get the cool new fun stuff or to go cool new places.
Let me add on to that. We've always been fully funded, but something I noticed when I started in my role almost 10 years ago, not quite, 9.5, is that we were taking ton of images, but they weren't actually getting out to places. So even though we had just a plethora of great stuff, there was kind of still a pain point or a little pinch point about actually getting those out to be seen, quite frankly, right? So opening the vault, getting imagery to people who can use it, or of our students, specifically our athletes, sharing imagery of them in action with them. And that's been a big win for us, just in community building and even marketing our own department and its importance on our campus.
Great, thank you. So another thing I would like you guys to comment on is the convergence of photo and video. It's obvious with who's here, it's obvious what the organization is doing, but the two are mixing. Obviously, Roger and Claire manage that. Andy, you partner with somebody, but talk about that idea of photographers making video, videographers making photos.
Yeah, I mean, our team is split. Back when we were external affairs, our photographers were doing a bunch of audio mixed with stills and telling awesome stories, and it was fun, and we don't do it now, and I kind of miss it. But now our team, we have under our creative director, we have our designers, and there's assistant director for design. We have our videographers, assistant director for video, and then photographers and myself. So we go on shoots together with our video team, and we do stuff together, but we're not. We have separate missions. We luckily don't have to do both at our place.
We call our photographer and videographer and visual media specialist our visual media team. So we're starting to use that terminology to kind of group them together. And when jobs come in, whether or not they contain requests for photo or video, that group is seeing all of those requests and making decisions collaboratively about how to cover or what deliverable will emerge. A lot of times they may be asking for a photo of an event, and we readily can determine this would make a great event recap, like quick turn video, because of how dynamic the subject matter is going to be. So again, it's us kind of having that internal dialogue, collaborating with each other to make sure we're providing the best coverage for our campus.
At Michigan, the video and photography budgets commingle together, but for the most part, the photographers aren't doing video and the videographers aren't doing still photography. We work together alongside a lot of times, especially we have an ongoing project called This is Michigan that produces stories about why it's important for all the residents in Michigan to realize that they have a great research university in their backyard, and that gets lost sometimes for people in the Upper Peninsula. Again, I showed you the map of how Michigan works, where we are yesterday, but yeah, so some people in the Upper Peninsula don't realize that, why is state money going to this university in Ann Arbor? We've been trying to tell that story with video and still photos, so they work together, but it's still separate. And about the only thing that one of our photographers will do on a regular basis is do some social media video, because we do have a little bit of a shared appointment with the social media team with our office. And then I know in some instances when we've done some international trips, the photographer has been asked to shoot video while they're there as well. So it's nice. I think every photographer wants to do video because they kind of see that in the future. We just haven't made the step to really combine things together.
Excellent. Yes, I think we see the future, and when you're in a larger school, you have the freedom to not mix them. In our department, we added Molly, who's a still photographer by training, but she's doing a lot of social stuff, a lot of vertical video. Who's doing vertical video in Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, anybody? Yeah, it's getting bigger. Anyway.
One thing I'd say is that, again, managing both staffs, it's interesting. All of the still photographers just said, I really want to learn video. None of the videographers just said, I want to take stills. That's the truth.
Interesting. Yeah.
So
thinking about, so another thing that I've noticed, the difference photojournalists, newspapers are closing down. It's a terrible thing. It's really unfortunate for the state of news information. But we're seeing our organization absorb a lot of these really talented news photographers. So what I've noticed in the last 10 years is a switch from essentially pure marketing photography into photojournalistic style. Do you see that, and how do you manage the tension between the two?
Go first. So my background is in journalism as well. I escaped the industry and moved into higher ed. And so when I started at Moraine Valley, I worked at a private four-year institution for about 6 years before that. But when I came to Moraine Valley and met Glenn, my first challenge to him was to shoot in more of a photojournalistic style, because to me that was synonymous with authenticity, and that's what our students are looking for, right? They can tell the difference between a staged image and one that was captured candidly, right? And so that was a shift for my department at the time, and it's paid off, I think, really well for us to really better reach our students, and for the recruitment and retention of our students, and again, help foster more engagement with different student types, because we were always pulling from our honors students, our full-time students. We weren't really capturing the true diversity of the community college student, which is predominantly part-time. We're a majority minority institution in that regard too. So it kind of forced us to step out of our comfort zone and engage with more students as well. You know, we were really strict on the kind of photojournalistic style to start, and we've relaxed a little bit and gone back to do some studio shots and things like that based on different needs. But that has definitely been a driving factor, not only visually, but I would say on the editorial side of the house too. So having a big focus on content, storytelling, and then having that really compelling imagery, be it still imagery or video to go along with it, has been wildly beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, our staff, we have a mix of folks, but most of us have, I worked in newspapers. Both Dorothy and Chamberlain went through the journalism school at the University of Georgia. Peter Fry, one of our other photographers, went through the art school, so it kind of brings a different background. But we do try to approach it. We always say, if it looks fake, it's because it is fake, obviously. And so if we're shooting a researcher, we try to be there when they're actually doing something, photograph that, and then get a portrait before or after. But we try to document as it happens. Now, a lot of times there's like, you walk by this pretty scene and it's like, man, it's like so pretty, but there's like students walking around with their phones down. They're not talking to each other or anything, which is authentic. But, you know, sometimes you'd like a little engagement between a couple of students. So, I mean, we do mix it, where sometimes we'll be like, we do have, our visitor center is part of our division, so our tour guides, they're very well spoken, very good on camera, very vetted. And if we need students, we call and they get some volunteers to come, and we give them pizza or t-shirts or coffee or whatever time of day, and use them in shoots as well. We try to make that look as authentic as possible, but a lot of times it's just a student in an area trying to show a space. So it's not like they're a political science student who's trying to do chemistry, you know, so it's completely fake, because that's just lying. So, I mean, in my journalism background, so, but yeah.
Yeah, I came from a photojournalism background as well, and it pained me when I first got there to see how much stuff was set up and staged. Only one person on the staff had any journalism background at all, and the other three had come from portraiture work, studio work. One didn't have any photo experience before. I mean, so it was different. And now I think it's a pretty good mix. But we still do shoots where, students are asked to come in, and we've actually done stuff in the past where we've we've hired models to come in. And if anybody's worked with professional models, you can get 4 hours of work done in an hour and a half, because they just know what they're doing. And again, if it's used for marketing purposes, I don't see an issue with that, as long as you're not pulling off something that's just completely fake. It just depends on how it's used, and again, it really upset my sensibilities at first, but I realized some of the end results were worth doing what we did. So we just did a shoot, a pretty large video shoot last week that had students. They weren't professional models, but they were students arranged by a university group to come in and do what they needed to do for the pictures. So.
Great.
Oh, the other thing I'll say is that the MIC is, I've noticed that I think the quality of the images in the past 10 years has increasingly got better, and it's gotten harder to win in there because the level of photography has never been better in my estimation.
Yeah, definitely agree on that. So Andy talked about stepping into a new role right before COVID, which, I mean, we all know COVID changed everything. And one of the things that it changed was, at least for me, on the edge of being a baby boomer, life-work balance, which is, I mean, we all experience that. Who's worked the 60-hour weeks? We all have, and we know what it's like. So talk about, and this is more of the human side of what we do, managing that, and how do we address that moving forward from post-COVID? You see where I'm going with that? I know it's a winding question.
We encourage our photographers, like all of us do, chase the light. You know, don't 8 to 5 is not when all the pictures are made, and be there when it's actually happening. So our photographers are pretty willing to go after nights and weekends and things when it's going to make a good picture. I don't ever balk on comp time. Can I have this? Yes, because I know they worked. I mean, they got to work it before. We don't do it on the front end, but I mean, I don't ever give them a hard time about having time off when I know that they've worked to do something better. Like, I will never give them a hard time about that, unless we all got to be somewhere for something, you know, obligations for the office. But I mean, I don't. My management style is, I know they're giving up their time away from their family to be at a thing where they normally don't have to work, but they're doing it because it's going to make a better picture. So I don't ever give them crap about that. So.
Our institution prior to COVID was very much you're in the office from 8 to 5:15, regardless of what your job responsibilities are for the day. And when I started there, I'm like, this is kind of insane, the amount of time that Glenn and our videographer, Matt, were putting in outside of regular business hours. So I started comping time for them right away, but we did it in secret. Like, don't tell anybody, mark your calendar, just like block it out. I'll know what it means, you know, that you're coming in at noon that day or whatever it is. Post-COVID, now we have actually the board finally adopted a formal hybrid work policy. Obviously, you can't be taking photos remotely. The joke through stay at home was that Glenn could take pictures of his backyard and we'd pretend they were campus shots, right? So now there's just built-in flexibility, which has been wonderful, and we don't have to do it in secret anymore, which is great too. You know, we used freelancers in the past to cover a lot of those undesirable times, or you know, you guys have, you know, family events, things happening on the weekends that you want to be there for, and even though there may be something important happening on campus, your personal life, your home life, your family is always first. So we'll find a way to cover that thing to make sure you can be where you need to be.
So an interesting thing happened for us pre-COVID was our building that our offices and studio was under construction, and it was for about 2 years before COVID, and it was nearly impossible to work in the building. I still can't believe that they let us in there. There was so much hammering and pounding and cutting holes in concrete and knocking out walls. It was ridiculous. So against all university rules, I told the photographers, if you don't need to be in the office, don't come in, because if you have a studio shoot, come in and do it. But if you need to process, you know, if you want to work at Starbucks, you want to go somewhere else on campus, go home, whatever, it didn't matter. The only thing they needed to be in the office for was to pick up equipment or do a studio shoot. And then we also have an intranet where you can only access it from the office. If you wanted to upload raw images, we keep those on a separate server just in the building so that it's not accessible outside that firewall. So then COVID hit, and for a while we were used to working at home. Everybody was, for the most part. And then we also experienced some furloughs during COVID for a few months. But since then, during COVID, the university adopted a policy that you need to be in the office 2 days a week. That's never a problem for photographers. It's pretty easily done. And our photography staff is compensated with overtime. So 40, 50, 60-hour work weeks are very common, but at least they do get paid for it. But having said that, I know that we try not to burn people out, and we try not to have everybody work weekends. We were able to add a 5th photographer in the spring to the staff, so that's helped alleviate some of the overtime and some of the nights and weekends. It's shifted to everybody, but everybody gets put into the mix. Everybody's shooting sports. Everybody shoots at night, we have 27 sports on campus to cover for Michigan athletics, so it's a pretty busy schedule.
Excellent. The other thing one thing I've been preparing for this and talking about, and Roger touched on it in his presentation, I don't remember when it was, yesterday, Monday, it's all a blur, to be honest. Identifying leadership. And it's something that I personally wanted to do. And it's really, I think it's important for us to, if you have that desire, to hear from these folks, what are they looking for? Because I think they've risen to that level and see that. So what do you guys look for in leadership? What traits can we develop amongst ourselves?
Taking initiative, bringing ideas to the table. This is come up with a project that would be a passion project for you and execute it, right? Make your intentions known, ask for what you need, right? If you have ambition to become a manager, move up the ranks, it could happen from any position you may hold on the team, truly. And just state what your objectives are, and hopefully you have a mentor or your boss finds a way to help develop and facilitate that for you. You'd have a good boss if they do that for you, right? And if your boss isn't willing to do that for you, find a mentor at your institution who could help, right? Continue to engage in professional development. Come back with new ideas and things that are going to be wins for your team and your colleagues. It's really hard for a leader to deny someone who has great ideas, right? You want to figure out how to make those happen because it brings everybody, along too. And then figure out what that path looks like. At our institution, for example, Glenn's been in effectively the same role since he started in, I don't need to give it away, a long time ago. Because there isn't really a hierarchy for photo and video folks to become leaders in their department or managers in their department. But you can get creative with those hierarchies, and you can engage in different aspects of the project life cycle. We've had Glenn proofing design work for the imagery used in it, and offering ideas and contributing in different ways besides snapping a photo, right? I don't want to say prove your worth, but show your worth. Show your worth at every juncture, and that gets recognized, or it should get recognized.
Yeah, I always say make yourself an asset, not a liability. You need to be somebody that produces. We are producers. We create stuff. We're creative, but we're relied on to produce images to meet the needs of the university. So if you're making yourself an asset, if you're busting your tail, if you're finding things on your own, that's only going to benefit you. On our team, that's what we do a lot of. For each photographer, they each have a responsibility within our division they're responsible for. So Dorothy works with Columns, which is our faculty staff newspaper. Peter works with Georgia Magazine, which is our alumni magazine. And then our newest hire, Chamberlain, has kind of become our liaison with the journalism school, which we've been intending to do but never had time to do. Well, she's kind of taken that on because she was a graduate and she knows a professor. And we've done some lighting training with them just this past semester. So she's kind of taken that role on. So each of them have something that they're responsible for, and bringing that to our team, that also has allowed us to get them reclassed and to get them raises. So showing some responsibility other than just showing up, I think helps them to grow in confidence, helps them to grow in being responsible for something and feeling like they're part of the team because they're responsible for this area. And it's helped them financially. It's helped me to argue for them financially. So if there's ways you can build in within your teams, maybe responsibilities, that might be a way to help gain some confidence and leadership within your own team.
That's a really good idea. I like that. The one thing I mentioned yesterday in talking about leadership is that I think photographers potentially could make good leaders, because a good leader to me is someone that makes decisions, effective decisions. And you all make decisions, dozens of them, every day. A lot of them are unconscious. You're deciding where to take a picture, when to take a picture, how to take a picture. You're working with communication skills and trying to get people into situations to make them comfortable or into situations to actually get the picture. So being a decisive decision maker is key to being a good leader, I think. And the other thing that I look for is someone that would be, and again, I'm not a good candidate to talk about this, but if your hair's on fire, don't lose your head, but calmly go and get the fire extinguisher and put it out and then move on. And a lot of people, when they get into situations like that, they lose their minds. And that's not the type of person that people get behind and follow. That's not the kind of leader that you want. You don't want someone that's reactionary. You want someone that has a plan and can effectively lay that plan out to you, and that you'll have the confidence in them that you're going down the right path with them.
Sorry, forgot something. Anyway, perfect. So we got some time left. I'm curious if anybody has any questions they'd like to ask. And do we have a? We do. Hang on just a second. Let's go Levi first, and then Doug.
Moving into a management job, do you get to create? Like, how do I give up creating? How do I give up creating to be a manager? How do I even want to do that?
So the struggle for me, I'm the newest manager. Obviously, that's why I'm on the panel. And I'm still trying to figure it out. And you can ask Dorothy and Peter and all them, and they're probably saying that I'm still figuring it out. I think my job now is to lead them well. My job is not about me anymore. My job is about serving my team. My job is about clearing roadblocks, trying to promote the things that they're interested in and get them excited about it, to bounce ideas off of. And my job is not about entering contests and winning stuff and me. It is no longer about me. I'm serving them. So there's no greater calling than that.
All right, Charlie, or who's got the mic?
Interested, skin in the game from stakeholders, clients. Rogers, obviously chargeback. You folks are fully funded, so I can see an advantage and disadvantage. I can see where Rogers stakeholders and clients have skin in the game. There's that need and desire to make it work, right, when you're working with someone. Do you have challenges with that being fully funded? And if so, do you have steps and processes you take with those stakeholders and clients to make them more engaged, willing to work closer with you like they have real skin in the game?
We definitely have some people who aren't the best clients. That's how do you deal with the clients who aren't great clients? We have some people who are on a list, a mental one. We also keep them, in our hearts many times. But, we see those requests come in. We know those clients. We consult internally before even approaching some of their work. Knowing when to elevate something that's problematic to whoever your supervisor is. A lot of times, if something comes to me, it's because it's not in a good situation, or I need to say no, or it's come to me from another way. I learned something about something that was going on an assignment. I strive to just keep communication open and being honest and transparent. We try to guide our clients. I talked about those interpersonal relationships you're trying to continue to foster with your clients. Knowing when a client is never going to convert to team photo or team video is something you do just realize at some point too, and then you figure out how to compartmentalize those jobs.
One of the things I would say is Michigan prides itself on being decentralized so that all the 19 schools and colleges can do whatever they want. And that's a real challenge when it comes to marketing, news, and information. And somebody said today about herding cats. It's beyond herding cats. That's a really difficult challenge to get everybody with the same on-brand message that goes out. And that was one of my goals since day one to try and allow other departments to use the terrific images that our photographers were creating, but some of them couldn't afford to use it. And it doesn't make any sense. We're all working for the same organization. We're all trying to get to the same goal. And it's like, why is this set up this way? And why is money the only thing that's standing in the way of making that happen? So again, that's why I tried to get some general fund money from the provost for this stuff. And so I'm kind of chipping away at it, and I think there might be some units here that are hybrid, and I think that's probably the way to go, because we don't say no to anything unless we literally can't staff it. We don't have the people left to do it, and we can't find the freelancers to do it. And over the course of 1,500 assignments that we get, that might be 10 out of a year that we don't do. So, singing for your supper, you don't say no to anybody. You don't want to give them an opportunity to not call you back. But I think the hybrid could be a way to go, because we'll cover the retirement party. Those pictures are never going to get used for the university, but it's important to those people within that group. So why shouldn't we be there or why shouldn't somebody be there to photograph it? So
for us, a lot of our work comes if it's deemed institutionally important. So if there's stories coming in our division, or if it's something coming from the president's office, we go and shoot those things. Finding the cool stuff in the schools and colleges that make cool pictures there's not a system for that. But I try to keep in contact with different communicators that are out in the colleges. Dorothy does a really good job of it too. Peter and Chamberlain are doing some, but we're probably the more talkative people. And just by that nature, knowing like, hey, what are you working on at a store? We have a thing called STRATCOM, Strategic Communication. So it's all the communicators come like once a month and meet in a thing like this, like an auditorium. And our division puts it on, and they talk about some new things that we're doing and things we're offering for them that they can use. But I go to those meetings early, and I walk around and talk to people I know. And a lot of times it's people in visual disciplines, because you're like, what's forestry doing next week? Is it something cool? But I probably am not close to the people in like romance languages, because it's like, or economics, because it's like for photos. So I think that's part of our job is to find out, because everybody assumes that we know everything, and we don't. We're regular people. We don't know everything that's going on campus and every department, every school and college. So having those interpersonal connections she's talking about is critical for finding out about cool things that we can go and take pictures of. Where like we do have the freedom to, if we deem something like that's going to be cool, we'll go chase that. Like, Dorothy will tell you that. We go and try to find things organically on our own, because we're not in a system where it's a chargeback, where our stuff, we shoot it, we put it in Widen, it's called Digital Arch on our campus, but it's a Widen database, and that stuff, all the communicators can download and use them for whatever they need. So having that freedom to produce images for that purpose allows us to chase cool visuals. And we do get stuff, usually the grip and grin type of stuff, we have gotten out of that. And we are able to say no to it. Here's our freelancer list. And we send it to them. That's not our mission. That's the part of our, that's a lot of times, like, I'm trying to come up with like good language for that, like all the time. I'm like, that's not in our mission of the university and supporting blah, 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 blah. Flowery language that, like, no, we ain't coming to that, you know? But our bosses support us and we don't have to do that. Now, there are some things where a school or college will partner with our leadership and we're partnering with them, which means we're giving them free work, but it's something that our leadership deems institutionally important. So then we get involved. Does that make sense?
It does. Do you ever have a challenge with, in that particular situation, do you ever have a challenge with that partner that you're going to work with not vetting for you or for behalf of their college who you're physically going to work with? And you're having challenges there.
I mean, usually if they want something, they're telling us who we need to go shoot. You know, so it's not, I mean, that person could be like a really bad person on camera, or they could be like doing lasers in their lab, and you're like, sweet, let's go. So, I mean, you don't really, I mean, sometimes those people we're partnering with, it's not a visual discipline. And that's where it gets like, all right, how are we going to do this? And a lot of times we get design involved, or motion graphics, or something else. So maybe a hidden photo that tells that story. So we try to, I say it like we got our poop together. We try to make it so we use the best asset, creative asset, whether it's design, video, photo, for whatever story we're partnering with one of these communicators in a school and college. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Say, thanks, Andy. You know, Doug had a question. We're going to go with that. We'll wrap it up there because we got things to do. Even though this is good discussion.
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Model releases over the last 5 years or so.
A minute and a half, Doug. A minute and a half.
Hey, you called me at the end. Model releases, over the last 5 years, certainly in our institution, they've become more of an issue of whether or not someone wants to be photographed, whether or not you're coming into a large classroom or individual students, how the images are used after you take the picture, whether or not you have a release or not. How is that used? What policies do you guys follow in order to try to track or to ask when you're on site, whether it's a marketing or editorial kind of event?
Well, we do some model releases occasionally. Some events, they'll say, this event is being photographed. If you don't want to be photographed, don't come in or sit in the back. And then the other thing is, you touched on it, it's that as a public university, these are public spaces for the most part. And if you don't misrepresent the photograph as to how it's going to be used in some other manner, you're pretty much okay. I'm not a lawyer. I didn't sleep at a Holiday Inn last night, so don't take it for that. But that's kind of how we operate for the most part. And I'll give you an example with 13 seconds left. We had a photograph that was taken at an event. It was some co-eds. They were drinking, they were toasting champagne. And it's okay to say, well, these people were at a fundraiser last night. It's not okay to say, boy, there's a real problem with teenage drinking. So it's the context of how the image is used. So.
And unfortunately, we can't always control how the images get reused in secondary uses, which is the
Yeah. Right.
one of them.
And boy, that is a big one. So, first of all, wow, perfect timing. All right. So, thank you to our panelists. Thank you guys for being here.